Hello and welcome to Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I want to follow up from that last video I did about how characters sort of see other characters, because there are a couple more points I want to make about description in narrative, and I'm going to try and cover a couple of them in this, but still try and keep it short and to the point. So in that previous video, I discussed how by tracking a character's eye movement, the author can create a sense of how a character is saying something. And by making it natural, by following the natural line of how a character looks, it can make the scene more immersive. Now, when I was talking about that, I was using the example of like checking someone out head to toe, because that's one of the common things. Now, obviously, it doesn't always have to be that. A character, when they are being introduced to someone else, can just focus on the face. That might be the only thing that they're looking at. But we still have that sort of going through aspects, and an author still has to create a sort of sequence. And that sequence really, in order to make it verisimilitudinous, in order to create this immersive reality, part of what they do is they think of the sequence that makes sense. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that sequence and what a character sees, although an author is deciding what they're going to put on the page, if the sequence is focalized through a character perspective, what the character notices can be very revealing about the character. And there's a very simple illustration for this. If your point of view character is a tailor or a seamstress, then when they meet another character, they may do the same sort of physical description of what the character looks like, but a point of interest for them is likely to be the type of clothing that the character is wearing. They will notice clothing more. They will notice those things because it is an area of expertise for them. And therefore, it's one of those things that you just sort of tick off in your head and you make note of. And so, if an author includes that information, it actually builds toward understanding the character. And you're like, oh, but who would ever use a tailor? Because the same thing applies when a character is a warrior or a duelist, that when they size someone up, instead of noticing clothing this time, when they see someone, they may again start at the head, but as they are going down, instead of noticing the clothing, they might notice the set of the shoulders. They might notice which hip the weapon is being worn on. They might look for telltale calluses on someone's hand. They might pay particular attention to how that character is standing and where their center of balance is. All of those sorts of things, because as a duelist, those things are important. They're the things that they note. If a character is a mage, they might notice symbols or arcana or some sort of mystical element associated with another character. That each character, you can build out characterization by considering what are the important things to that character. And it doesn't always have to be job specific or role specific or function specific. It can actually be other things. Again, if your character is single and heterosexual and they meet a member of the opposite sex, then maybe the description might include aspects of whether or not they are attractive. If the character is heterosexual and they meet someone of the same sex, then they may not focus on that. And that can go to aspects of character. If your character is someone from a prejudiced background, so they hate dark elves or they hate dwarves and they meet a dwarf, then we would expect that hatred to be in some way communicated in how the features are described. That the language used in description can be very telling about characteristics. So if you consider a character who likes golden elves but dislikes silver elves, two elven characters walk towards them. They may have very similar shaped ears, but how the character describes the golden elf's ears may be that they were delicately pointed. Whereas with the silver elf, because of a negative perception, they might describe them as sharp and something that is not as pleasant. And those simple changes to language. So the description is still accurate, the description is still creating something that the reader can imagine. It is being colored by the perception of the character. And that can be very, very powerful in giving insight not only into the point of view character, but also the potential relationship between these characters. And that sometimes is overlooked because we think that description is always going to be factual, but fact in this instance can still be accurate. It still can be factual, but the perception of the reality will be character focalized. And that is an exceptionally powerful tool that an author can use to sway your opinion about someone. And they can highlight aspects of another character to make you like them more or like them less, all through whether they use positive or negative forms of the same description. And so you can understand why role and function and character type can influence how the character is going to see, what they are going to note, what they're going to view as important. So a prioritization of what they are going to list in terms of their description of the other character that is being relayed to us. But also the language used, the perception of these things is also a potential source of information, not only of the character being described, but of the character doing the perceiving. And that is a fascinating and brilliant tool that can be deployed by authors. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.